Good evening. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, one more time, we're here. Today is Wednesday, May 22nd, and we have a special guest tonight. I want to talk about that in 5 seconds. We're going to go straight to our page, little details that we have to do when we start doing something in Facebook, especially light technology. All our directors and let me see. Make sure everything is all right. And here we are, right in time. And here we go, Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, good evening, one more time. Tonight we have a very special guest. Okay, I'm going to talk about this person a little bit because I know her for almost 11 years. We were sitting here chatting a little bit, and we remember how many years ago we decided. For some reasons of life, we ended up meeting. She's working with the poor for many years. I don't want to say how long because I don't remember. And right now she's the new deputy director. Now we have with us Ms. Beth. Pleasure to be here, Ms. Beth.
Nice to see you again. Thank you, Edison.
Thank you for helping us and for taking the call to come into this meeting that we have. You know, this is your home. From the day we open, you come over here, and appreciate you being always us. When we ask you to come in, you've been always here. And tonight is a very special night for us because a lot of drivers out there are trying to understand what's happening in the course. A lot of people are very upset with over the years, but nothing has been changed, which is not really true. And tonight we just want to make sure that we reach as many people we can in this industry so they can understand what's happening in the course, what happened in the past, what's happening in the present, and what's going to be the future of the course, because it's not going backwards, and where we're going to feel and how we're going to be in the future. So tonight, I just want to give you a little brief story for you guys before I let Ms. Beth Rooney talk about how is this meeting come up and take place. Over the months and years, many drivers have been upset with us because we haven't called for any kind of action. We haven't asked for anybody to do any kind of demonstration in the course to show how upset we are with the way they're being treated, the way the terminals are working, and many other issues that we all know we all face daily, every day since who knows how long. But here's the situation. Usually we do those demonstrations to call the attention of the authorities. So we did it for a couple of years, from 2000 to 2008. As a matter of fact, that's how we met in 2008 in one of the last demonstrations. And ever since then, we have got the opportunity to have questions answered. And this is why we don't do these demonstrations, because like you can see, now, without you have to taking a ticket, without you have to getting in any kind of problems with the police officer, without any kind of aggravations, we're going to kind of understand what's happening in the course. Maybe the answers that we're going to get is not the ones that you want to hear, but at least we're going to have an idea of what's happening. And again, for the people that speak only Spanish, I'm going to try to translate a little bit of this conversation in another 30 minutes before we end the show tonight. So by all this, I'm going to let Ms. Beth Rooney introduce herself, tell us about what she does, what she's planning to do, and how she's been working with us before we go to everything else. So Ms. Beth, I'm going to let you speak now, finally.
Great. Well, thank you, Edison, again, and all port truck drivers for the opportunity to be here this evening to meet with you and talk about what's going on in the port. The Port Authority fully recognizes that port truck drivers, drayage drivers like yourselves, and the folks that are joining us tonight and in the future really are the bread and butter. We can't operate the port without having a trucking community that fully supports us and is actively engaged and involved in the business. And I think, as you know, 85% of all of our container volume moves out of the port by truck. We are totally dependent upon the trucking community to move the cargo that our commerce, cargo that our region is dependent upon, and which makes the port of New York and New Jersey thrive. So we really do value this relationship with the trucking community, and I look forward to the discussion tonight.
Yes, and like I was saying at the beginning, our first meeting wasn't too easy to become. You know, like for many years, especially me, we were always trying to get answers, and we never have the opportunity. I mean, I don't want to say we never have it. I will say it was hard to get an opportunity to get. Technology wasn't helping us, and when we have we have a meeting, it was always a closed door. And I'm going to tell you because it happened to me. When we went inside the closed door, get some information and understand all the things and left. A lot of drivers usually tell us that, oh, you already got, by the authority, they already pay you. And it wasn't that, it's just that, once you start learning the system, and this is what I'm telling you guys, I wish I can give you, we're trying to do as many seminars, and we're trying to work with companies to promote these seminars, to educate about these scenarios, these situations, because without the proper information, we're going to continue having riots, people upset, and I'm not going to tell you a lie. A lot of people are very upset of the way they treat us at the ports with the longshoremen, which in the future we're going to try to call one of the authorities from the longshoremen to tell us, what can we do as a group together to stop these abuses, because we're not going to say, it's just because one bad apple, we can't target everybody. And that's the sad situation. One bad apple creates a nightmare for everybody else. And but coming back to the point, what's happening, what is being happening, I don't remember. We have some history on Facebook if you want to just scroll down. We have the port understood the problems because we have long lines back in, what was it, 2000, before
well, there's been a couple of different iterations,
Yeah, that was when the Performance Council was created.
Yeah, and that was back in 2014.
2014. It was created because we have worse lines than what we have right now, right? We have a shortage of chassis because back then companies weren't allowed to use their own chassis. They were giving hard time back then. I remember like it was yesterday. But that has changed, right? And if you want to give me, a lot of people say, what's that? What is the Performance Council? What did they did for their benefit? How do we benefit from that? Where, I never see any changes because let's be realistic. Drivers don't see any changes. The line is still long at 8 p.m. And I told you before, I have to mention this terminal because if I don't mention 8 p.m., people are really going to have to stone me to death in somewhere. So, these lines, the way these terminals are operating, like the one that I mentioned just now, it created a concern. Back in the days, it used to be global. Now it's one of the biggest terminals the drivers want to go. But still, the changes have happened over the years. So if you can just tell us a little bit of what was the Performance Council doing, how it, what's the purpose and what they have found and what they think can be done and where we're going to be in the future.
Sure. You gave me a lot to think about and to answer in one time. But if we roll back the clock to 2014, as you indicated, there were a number of things going on at the same time, with vessels being off schedule, with some labor shortages, with chassis shortages. It was the aftermath of Hurricane Sandy, and there were equipment shortages. There were a number of things that were all going on at one time, and that led to, quite honestly, what was the worst congestion in the port's history. And that congestion was felt the most by the truck drivers as the guys and gals that are on the front line. And it was felt by our customers who were delayed in receiving their cargo. So together with the then director of the port, Rick Larrabee, and John Nardi from the New York Shipping Association, we created this Council on Port Performance to get all of the various sectors of the industry together at one table to talk about the issues and to identify the problems and how do we fix those problems. So for the first time in the port's history, and I would say arguably for the first time in any port's history, the folks that don't have a business relationship with each other, people that were competitors of each other, were getting together around the same table in order to talk about the issues that were impacting, negatively affecting productivity and efficiency. So for the first time ever, terminal operators were gaining insight into the life of a truck driver and the challenges that he or she faces. For the first time ever, the truck drivers were beginning to understand the challenges of operating and maintaining chassis and maintaining a good inventory of chassis. For the first time ever, ocean carriers and shippers were understanding what else goes on at the port terminal between when the cargo is discharged from the ship and when it actually arrives at a warehouse and distribution center. So by getting people to the table at the same time, and that open lines of communication, as we're talking about, having had those now for a decade or longer, we were able to begin to understand how the entire system works. And when we understand the entire system works and how our individual portion of the system, the truck drayage world, works in relation to the rest of the supply chain, it helped people understand how can we make the entire supply chain more efficient. So for the course of 6 months, many industry leaders, including down to truck drivers, participated in a session to really peel apart the onion and to identify all of the pain points in the supply chain and how is it that we could improve those. That led to the publication of a report in June of 2014 that had 23 recommendations on it that would, when implemented, improve the efficiency of the Port of New York and New Jersey, and quite frankly, provide for resiliency, so that the next time there was some type of disruption or anomaly in the industry, that hopefully we could weather the storm better the next time. So we've had some great successes that came out of the Council on Port Performance. So, one thing that, we have today, and, I gave you the Truckers Resource Guide. It was truckers like yourself who had said to us right at the very beginning that new drivers entering the market have no idea what to do when they get to an APM terminal versus a Port Newark container terminal versus a global container terminal in New York. There were no instructions. There was no guidance. They needed to figure it out by talking to somebody at the lunch truck or talking to each other while they were waiting online. So we set out through a collaboration of the port community to create the Truckers Resource Guide. It was first published in 2015, and it was published in English, Spanish, Polish, and Mandarin because our surveys indicated that those were the primary languages of the truck drivers. We regularly updated that online. It is downloadable as a iBook to your phones. And then we just recently, just within the last couple of weeks, published the second version of that. So this now is available in hard copy at the Truckers Resource Center, Truckers Service Center, Truck Service Center at Expressport Plaza in Port Elizabeth, and is also available, for download. So this is just one simple example that is relevant to the truck drivers. The other things that I would say that we've been working on is the port community system, whereas you as drivers might not be familiar with the port community system, but your dispatchers are. So in the past, the dispatchers and the shippers needed to go to 5 or 6 different websites in order to find out the status of your container and plan your cargo for the day. That's no longer required, where they can go to a single one-stop website and identify the status of all of the containers that are assigned to a particular trucker and plan your day accordingly. Much more efficient, much more productive, and not as time-consuming to do it that way. The appointment system at Global Container Terminal. You referenced that in the past it was a little challenging to get in and out of Global Container Terminal. The appointment system that they've put in place is a key recommendation of the Council on Port Performance. I could go through dozens, of recommendations. Yeah. But what has really happened in the past couple of years is that there has been a concerted effort by each and every one of the terminal operators to continue the investment in infrastructure, in computer systems that make their operations more efficient, that make the interface with the truck drivers more efficient, in the equipment at the terminals so that they can provide, better service to the trucking community. So while we understand that there are still pain points, we're continuing to grow. The investment of our terminal operators is not over. They're continuously looking at process improvement and bringing on more equipment and enhancing computer systems, but I think even you would say that things are much better in the port than they were in 2014, and with the exception of some, bad periods of time, which are sporadic, by all intents and purposes, the port is much more efficient across the board than it was in 2014.
I have to agree that the port has been changing, because the people when I started back in the 90s, people don't understand. We used to change the chassis chambers. That's how bad it was.
Mm-hmm.
We used to be hiding chassis someplace, and sometimes we used to spend 3 to 4 hours waiting for a chassis change, because back in the days, for you guys, the new ones they think the piers were bad now. You got to remember, the terminals before used to have every container mounted. So if you got a good chassis, you're the lucky man. But sometimes 90% of the time, those chassis never work. So you have to go to chassis lines. It was a whole thing. Like you said, things have changed. And something that I have to add in this is people don't understand that the volume also has changed.
Absolutely.
We've been breaking records, and this is something that I'm very proud to say that I've been part of it over the years that I'm working. I'm never going to take I think that the trucking community that we have in the East Coast, especially in our ports, and the West Coast too, I don't want to let those down, it's very hard. People, we are immigrants that would like to work, and we work really hard. The only scenarios that we see right now, like I say, I have to come back to this, because people in here, they asking questions, why the APM does this kind of things, why these terminals do. I wanted to let you know something that I learned over the years. The Port Authority is an institution that owns the land. Okay, regardless of how much we want to charge against the Port Authority, they only own the land. Imagine you having a house and you rent the apartments. Okay, yes, you're going to have access to the apartments, but the law, doesn't allow you just to grab the keys and go inside those apartments and get in. It's got to be a specific reason for you to go in there, and it has to be by law or something like that. Other than that, I'll be sued, or you will be sued if that does it. The same thing happened with the Port Authority. And this is the part that it took us years to understand. The Port Authority is just the mediator that comes in place and try to accommodate some kind of conversation, because we can't reach the manager of APM. We can't reach the people at PNCT or the Global. It's not that easy. Those are people that work, these terminals work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365, 60 days, not a year. And that's something that we don't understand. I want to tell you, a lot of people question, are we going to be having this conversation? Because we've been having this conversation a lot. They say, why we don't open the terminals 24 hours? That's a question that I want to ask you. Why we don't open them?
Sure. Well, that's in fact something that we're working on. So after a couple of years of working on the Council on Port Performance's recommendations, we decided to do an update to the Council on Port Performance plan, and that was done just last year in 2018. And one of the top priorities that we identified in 2018 is what is it that we need to do in order to get to the point where we are open, maybe not 24/7, but at least a second full shift, possibly getting to the point of a Saturday consistently. Right now, we're not operating 24/7 because it's not supported by the industry. So, and now we talk about a supply chain problem. So while there are individual companies and individual drivers that would love to be able to operate on a second shift or overnight or on Saturdays consistently, there's not enough demand from the business to support the terminals operating those gates consistently on longer hours. We need to have a place so that you as drivers have an opportunity to drop your cargo off. And while you well know, many of the warehouse and distribution centers have a drop and pick operation, but many, many more do not. And you need to be able to do a live unload, and that live unload is not available 24 hours a day. So the second part of that problem is that we don't have sufficient secure parking within the region, and the shipping community has to be willing to pay for an early pull, a pre-pull, and then pay for the overnight parking, insecure parking if it were available. So there's a systemic change that is required in the industry, and it's going to come, and it's going to be driven by demand. Right now, last year, we handled 7.2 million TEUs, 20-foot equivalent units, about 4.5 million containers.
4.5 million containers.
Yeah,
wow.
That number is expected to grow. We expect in the next 30 years, we expect that volume is going to double or triple.
Wow.
Double or triple. So when the demand is there, the rest of the supply chain will adapt to longer hours. The reason the West Coast ports are open essentially 22 hours a day, 6 days a week, is because there's sufficient demand. There's sufficient volume that is moving constantly that forced the warehouses and distribution centers to be open.
Well, we got to remember that, over here, because I got to say, because I'm seeing it, unfortunately, the cities around the port have become unfriendly to the truck drivers.
That's part of the issue as well.
Like you can see, you already say one of the biggest problems that we're facing as a truck drivers, the majority of the trucking companies, because of the way the industry managed to shrink economically instead of growing economically, in an effort to make more, to continue to provide service to the race that we are, that we don't want to talk about with this part of the conversation. And they have, unfortunately, choose to just use these yards, these port security yards, and it's not enough space around the area. I mean, let's face it, when you go in a busy season to any of the terminals, you have to be in line just to drop a container. So if you think it's just the lines and the ports, no, we understand, and this is the part that we're trying to do this program. A lot of people question me, what have we changed? What have we done in Port Driver Association? We don't see any of those changes. You can't feel it, because like she's mentioning, the changes have passed little by little, year by year. It haven't happened overnight.
Absolutely.
And these changes are an evolution. And as a member of one of the organizations that's been the longest in this industry, I understand that. So I have to pass the knowledge to you guys. But the problem is I'm a truck driver. And you know what happened with the truck driver community? When a truck driver approaches, they question, what do you know about truck driving? You're not a truck driver. And this is why we're trying to come out with these programs, so you don't hear just from me. I want to make sure the industry has a voice. But the problem was over the years, and we met on different occasions. It's not that you didn't want to meet with drivers. It's just when the drivers, you guys are very convenient too. I got to tag everybody. I don't just want to tag the authority, the longshoreman workers and the terminals. I'm going to tag the truck drivers. Everybody's convenient, okay? And when we have meetings, we don't get, we gladly don't want also the 10,000 drivers that we want. It's not enough space to have that. But this is what the Port Driver Association has been trying to do over the years, get an opportunity to have somebody with the authority to talk on behalf of the industry about the real scenarios that you don't get to hear. You see, the problem is we've been told by everybody that we have different people that represent us. And they get this information. Look at how much things we have. This is only a meeting for 1 hour, but look how much information we have here in this table. And the information that you gain over the years never reaches to you. It reaches to the highest people in your company, the owner of the company, maybe the dispatcher, but never reaches back to you. So the lack of information that we have is so big. And because of that lack of information, we get upset at everybody, including me. How many times have you already told me that we don't do nothing in Port Driver Association, that nothing is being done, that we're not supposed to support this organization because You don't see no changes. Why are you going to support an organization that don't give you any changes? Well, this is the changes that we want to mention. This opportunity for you, and I appreciate you taking the time instead of being with your family coming over here. That gives me a lot of comfort that I may be doing something right, because not everybody want to just come in out of your way. And I know you live far away from this area, and you've been up since 6 o'clock in the morning because she comes over here very early, so she knows the area, she understands the system, and she worked really hard to accommodate not just the truck driver. She got to accommodate the longshoremen, she got to accommodate the terminal managers, the shipping association, the customers. So it's a lot of people that come into this plane. And this is why we're telling you, you got to understand the industry. You see, I've been telling everybody, knowledge is power. That's something that we're eradicating out there. Knowledge is power. If you understand this industry, how it works, you won't have too many problems. And I hear you guys. I hear everything you're saying over here. Why the long lines in Sealand? Why the long work? The longshoremen don't treat us right. Why can't we take the chassis out from the backyard? Why we do these things? All these things have a reason. Okay, it has to do with a lot of factors. This is only going to be one of the big difference, one of the many meetings, hopefully, that we want to promote for the future to give you more understanding. We can't get into all these details. I mean, if you want to just, with the knowledge that you have, and I have to come to this place, is with the knowledge that you have, let me know a little bit about why APM, and this is because everybody's questioning why APM is so bad. Why APM? Why the workers at APM are so lazy? Okay, and I don't believe they're lazy. They just, I work with managers of APM, okay, and they understand that they have priorities. They work at the ships. If they put a truck in front of the line to try to help, 7 trucks from the ships that come in to unload the containers get stuck, and that creates another problem. Okay, so it's a different thing. But based on your knowledge, you've been talking to a lot of people about this issue. I think that you have the opportunity now to explain to some of the guys that are listening, and they're going to be listening tomorrow. Why do we have this problem?
Yeah, sure. And let me say one thing about knowledge is power. You can recall in the very beginning when we first started to tackle these congestion issues, there wasn't a person in the Port Authority that knew anything about truck driving and what the life of a truck driver was like. And you might recall that we put about a dozen of our staff in 12 different trucks to experience a day in the life of a truck driver. And let me tell you, that was an eye-opening experience. I had the opportunity to ride with you as well as another gentleman doing 2 completely different types of moves, as did a number of our staff. And that is exactly the type of information that we can't help create change until we understand all of the various dynamics, of the industry. So knowledge, is power. With regards to, APM, certainly they need to, speak for themselves. But what I can tell you is the investment that APM is making today in additional cargo handling equipment, in additional manpower and labor, where there have been quite a few personnel that have been added to the terminal in recent months. They're in the process of building a new gate now that should be online, if not by the end of the year, early next year. That new gate system will have some of the latest resources, available, there to help expedite, the move. The redeployment of equipment in the yard, and they've changed the way that they are unloading the ship and moving containers into the yard, and the interface where in the past vessel activity and truck gate activity were happening at the same time in the same places of the yard, and it created concerns. So they are in the process of making a number of significant investments, significant procedural and policy changes to what they're doing, but they're doing it in an operating terminal, right? It's like changing the tire on your truck while it's traveling down the highway at 65 miles an hour. Cargo is still coming, coming, and you guys are still coming in the gate, and they're still pushing cargo out to the rail, all while they're trying to make all of these improvements. So I think just as you have seen changes in some of the other terminals in the Port of New York and New Jersey that are through many of their major investments and process changes, change is coming at APM. You know, they're a global company that is committed to serving their customers. Their customers include the trucking community. Patience, you know, I think, I know at times it's wearing thin, but I think we can see the light at the end of the tunnel. There is a constant dialogue between APM management and the Port Authority, between APM management and the various trucking associations in the port community. They're constantly meeting with shippers. They are open, you know, to dialogue. They recognize the improvements that can be made, and they're committed to making them. So I think we're going to be back here in a couple of months having another conversation, and you guys are going to have a totally different perspective on how things at APM are going.
Well, after watching Global Terminal, I tell you, I can understand. And for you, it's the same in English. Say, be careful with what you wish. Okay, guys, and I'm going to tell you, be careful with what you wish. Everybody is very happy, and I'm going to be on you. I think with the experience that I've gained by having meetings with you and being to different meetings in the industry, I think that we have learned a lot of things about the industry. And the appointment system is something that everybody is pushing in the terminals. It's something that is very tricky, and I don't know what's going to happen. We have a lot of issues to worry about right now that I don't want to talk about at this moment. We're going to continue ring. Hopefully, we're going to try to bring one of the persons from the longshoremen of the ILA, for the people that don't understand what the longshoremen is, to come over here and see, you know, to give them the opportunity to explain why some of their workers have some issues, you know, and it's a lot of stress, you know. I don't want to be, I have to be impartial at this moment. I don't want to attack one or not attack another. I got to make sure that everybody understands, because it took me almost 2 decades of my life to understand this. It wasn't something that happened overnight, you know, we just didn't meet, you know, we have different things, and like I say, it's going to happen, and we're going to, this is hopefully the first of many more meetings that we're going to have to give you updates, to try to educate you guys on what's happening. And I know you guys that you want to continue talking about the terminals and problems, but understand what she's saying. She's saying that the terminals are trying to do construction while we are working on it. So imagine like you cleaning your home while you're having a party.
That's a great analogy. That's a great analogy.
Okay, it's the same thing, you know. So the idea is, I'm doing these live Facebook shows for you guys to have a little knowledge, because I'm telling you, something that happened with me over the years, Ms. Beth, is that every time I have a meeting, I get 10 drivers, 20 drivers, 100 drivers, and everybody have one problem. Everybody is like, oh, this is a waste of time. You know, out of 10,000 drivers, look, 5 drivers come in, or 100 drivers come in. The industry is never going to change. So the industry did change because they didn't understand that I was talking to 5 drivers, yes, but every day, every other hour. Mm-hmm. So the knowledge was being passed to different 5 drivers, sure, even though they didn't see it. I was doing it. And the same thing we're trying to do with Facebook. You know, I'm trying to avoid myself of being out there and trying to have meetings in churches, which you already made. Yeah. It's not that I didn't. A lot of people say, you're lying, you never made. We did have meetings in churches. So,
I can vouch for it.
Okay, so we, something to, I mean, it's not funny, but yes, it was funny at the time, because I was like, well, we can really in a church. It's true. We try to use as many, we don't have resources. Our Pro Driver Association don't have that many resources. We don't have people to come and give us money. People think that we're making money out of this. My goal over the years was to educate. And why educate? Because over the years we understood, you know, once you do something so many times, you learn what is the lack. Why can't we make changes? Because we don't understand the industry. Why can't we go forward? Because we don't understand what can we go forward. Why we keep targeting? You know, people say, if you're crazy, what's the crazy definition? Crazy is a person that keeps doing the same thing over and over and over and asks for different results. Right. I don't want any crazy anymore. Okay, I don't want to go and have demonstrations in the middle of the highway because I can go and block the two sides. I mean, the terminals will love me because that way they can work faster inside the course. But in reality, the only people that we're going to be harming is ourselves because we're going to get in problems with the authorities. We may get tickets. We may lose days of work. We may get in accidents, and maybe I ended up arrested one more time, which I already mentioned many times. I have been arrested. So that's not the point. The point is to understand the industry and how this changed. We have different things that are going to be happening for the future. Truck guide resources. This has come out of the printer. This is something that she's been mentioning. I want to mention it one more time. The reason that people don't need to get these books, and I tell you why. A lot of people don't see this happening every day, but it does happen every day. When you get a truck driver, when you get an accident, a real bad accident, your first priority is to call 911. 911 will know, they don't know where line 422 in APM is. They don't have GPS directions for that. So I think we have targeted, right?
Yep.
We have targeted some phone numbers for the Port Authority Police. It's a lot of information about some different things, terminal operations offices or security offices. So if you can get your hands on all of these books, get it. I support these education things.
Yeah, I would add that there's also some really good information in here. Often we get questions from truck drivers in particular that have had issues at a particular terminal and been voided out for a reason, or at APM has had to go to the driver training program. The reality is that each and every one of the terminals has a set of rules and requirements associated with essentially driver behavior. When and where you can be, in and out of your truck. Use of electronic equipment, vests, speed limits, adhering to, stop signs and traffic signals, and in all of the terminals, violation of those rules is certainly a cause to be voided out of the terminal. To be expelled from the terminal for a period of time, including for lifetime, if it's egregious enough.
We've already been through one of those cases.
So if you're not familiar with the rules and requirements for operating inside a terminal, and it's certainly within our terminal operators' rights in order to choose those rules and regulations that are specific to their business. It's important that you take a look at this guide and understand that, because your life and your livelihood and your ability to operate in the port is also dependent upon your ability to adhere to the rules and requirements, not only within the terminals, but within the marine terminal highways, adhering to traditional traffic rules and regulations. We've had a number of truck accidents, particularly at the northern end of Port Newark on the outer Port Street curve.
Yep.
The roadway alignment, there, it's a pretty sharp turn. It's something that we recognize. There will be a reconstruction project of that turn, but for right now, guys, you got to take the turn slowly. You got to be aware of the potential for your loads shifting. We've seen far too many containers coming off of the chassis and hadn't been secured properly. So, just as much as it is everyone else's in the port's responsibility to behave appropriately to help the supply chain move efficiently, the truck drivers have an important role to play here as well.
And that's another issue that you don't understand how the Port Authority have to deal with that, because we create a grid line that cross traffic delays in whatever the port is situated in a section that controls a lot of entrance and exit out of New York City. So whatever grid lag that we create in the ports creates a problem for the whole community that have to go to New York. So this is something that we're going to be talking in the future, where you mentioned accidents that are happening and how the Port Authority has realized the problem, and hopefully we may have another person from your office come in and talk about that, because it's very important. It's our safety. Anything to do with our safety is very good, and we can help everybody else understand it.
It's not only your safety, in many cases it's your livelihood, right? Your ability to make a good living. It's your equipment, your personal, trucks and your equipment that, you're going to have some costly repairs on. And a lot of times, unfortunately, the accidents are, folks trying to, cut into a line, riding in a middle lane and at the last minute trying to cut over in order to get into a terminal entrance, or, the fight to get to the exit lanes and, and cutting folks off. Not going to get you there any faster.
Definitely not.
But does have the potential to, again, to be very costly.
I want to answer some of the questions there. I want to tell you something, guys, and this is, you see, you got to understand something. We're not trying to protect anybody from any union or any workers. I think anybody that does wrong have to be, regardless of where he works, have to be punished for whatever they do. Okay, Ms. Bedroom is over here today to explain some of the scenarios that are happening in the ports, because everything is in the construction. Construction has been finished. It's in the process. And like she mentioned, everything is in the process while they're working on it. So it makes it more harder, like PNCT. We have a long lines at PNCT. A lot of people say we are ready to use those fancy speakers in every line. Maybe we don't, because we don't have the wires connected. I don't know. I really don't know. This is something that is happening in PNCT. We have the grid line. The speakers are set down in the back. They're in the lines. The system is supposed to let you park in the guide, send you to the location, and you will speak in there, make sure that you're ready there. Like the same system is a global terminal, but in a different way. The problem is not using. A lot of people, they all have their own ideas because the longshoremen, because the fights with the union, automation. I don't know. I don't want to get into that. It's too deep for that. But the idea of this meeting specifically is to give you guys the opportunity to understand that we are talking to the community, to the Port Authority, and to the terminals. Our page has managed to get into all those doors, and that's why she's here, because she sees that not just drivers, longshoremen are watching this show, shippers, customer brokers. Everybody is watching this show, and is going to be watching the show of the week. It's a long weekend, so we have a nice view. So a lot of people are going to. You can rerun it. You need autographs. She's going to be. We can give you autographs another day. But the situation is this. I personally invited the Port Authority. I'm glad that Ms. Belroni took this as a representative of the Port Authority to come in to let you guys know that we're trying to get answers for you. We're trying to give you the opportunity to understand from their side. I can be here by myself, right? I could be sitting here talking about the same thing because I have some knowledge. I can probably do the same thing. But my idea is for you to understand what we're doing here in Port Driver Association. We're not just here to try to make you a member. We're not here to just to tell you to come in and ask you for money, because we never ask you for money. Okay, we're trying to give you a place where you can get some resources for different things that the industry needs and that you're going to request, or you're going to be requested. And at the same time, an opportunity for you to have a place if you have a problem with anybody in the terminals, which we already fixed. Okay, we have a driver that was banned from the terminals for years, and you help us release that. So it's not just things that happen. This is things that we do behind doors, so we don't go bragging, but we've been working. That's what I say. The Port Authority and Port Driver Association have managed to make a good relationship. We don't have to go and do demonstrations. We have a good relationship. We talk about different things, and we want to keep talking about these things. And like I say, guys, my idea is to do this in Spanish, but we have a very limited amount of time. And being this the first time, it's amazing how time flies. You see, I feel like those shows on TV, you see them there, and you want to, please keep going. I like it. And today I like the show, and I want to see how you guys have it. I hear you guys. I see the questions. You're going to read it.
And I'll read them. But let me, if I can, address two things, before you wrap up. And I know you want to wrap up in Spanish as well. So, one of the things that we did learn on feedback from the trucking community, we sent out surveys to all of the trucking companies, and if you had the opportunity to go to the truck service center, I would say anywhere between 4 to 6 months ago, our staff was surveying all of the individual truck drivers, and that was about your experience at the truck service center. That's a service and a function that the Port Authority provides in order to register your ceiling card, in order to connect your TWIC, which is your background check card, to your ceiling card. And one of the things that we're going to be rolling out now, because you guys have asked for it, is the resetting your PIN. The PIN number that's associated with your TWIC card, more often than not, it's the one thing that people forget. You never forget your bank PIN, but people are forgetting their PIN for their TWIC card. And if you do that, you have to go to the office on Raymond Boulevard in order to reset that. And so anytime you have a change in your C-Link, your TWIC card needs to be valid and you need to know your PIN number. So when you don't know your PIN number and you have to stop doing what you're doing and go to Raymond Boulevard and reset your PIN, it's a huge inconvenience to you guys, and we get that. So we're in the process of talking to the Transportation Security Administration, and I will say by the end of this year, we will have the ability right within our office to hopefully reset the PIN on your TWIC cards. We're doing that because you guys have asked for it. You guys have said that that is one of the things that causes you the most trouble when you're dealing with trying to get your credentials organized so that you can move in and out of the terminals. The other thing, and I know that it's a point of contention with a number of companies and with a number of drivers, but we are doing this not to penalize trucking companies, not to penalize drivers, but we are operating this commercial maritime industry right in the backyard neighborhoods that many of our drivers live in Newark and Elizabeth and Jersey City and Bayonne. And the environment, the air quality, is dangerous to many. Understand that the trucking community is not the sole source, and in fact is a very small contributor of the environmental emissions, but it is a contributor. So we have, I think as you all know, been in a very pragmatic, I think practical way, been phasing out the oldest, most dirtiest, and most dangerously polluting trucks. Granted, these trucks are valid to operate everywhere else in the state of New Jersey, but it's that concentration in the port that's a challenge. So we do have a rule change that's out for public comment right now. All drivers and companies are welcome to comment on that. But what we're looking to do is to, in August of 2020, got plenty of time to prepare, we will phase out, and it's about 250 to 300 trucks that have a 1997 or older engine. So it's really only those that have a 1996 and a 1997 engine. Everyone else is already banned. Then, in July of this year, if you're not already doing business in the port, which doesn't apply to you guys, but new folks that are trying to get into operating in the port, they're going to have to come in with a 2010 engine model year truck or newer. What that does, for us is slowly and incrementally improve the air that we're all breathing. It's not just about the host communities, but we're all working in this environment as well. So we're making slow, incremental changes to the environment in which we're operating in. But we are coming out with more money. So we will be, I'd say, in the first week or two of June, we'll be coming out with another $3.7 million that will be available to truck drivers to apply for a grant from the Port Authority, upwards of $25,000 that is available to truckers in order to help upgrade their truck to a newer engine model year truck. Does require that you destroy the old truck. As long as you can drive it into the scrapyard, you can take off mud flaps and seats and whatever you need to do to drive it into a scrapyard. You're able to do that, and we'll give you $25,000 provided that you have been operating in the port for the last 12 months, and in that 12-month period conducted 150 trips or more to the port, and then you must commit to continuing to operate in the port for the next 5 years. So, $25,000 is certainly not a lot of money when you're considering a brand new truck, but when you're looking at trucks now that are the 2013, 2014 models that are used, that even have some high mileage on it, but in the life of a truck that sometimes get 1,000,000 miles, those trucks are going for about $50,000 to $60,000. So we're paying almost half of the truck of the cost of a replacement truck. So we're going to be sending information out to all of the trucking companies. We ask the trucking companies to provide it to the drivers, to post it in break rooms, to post it in dispatch areas, to give that information out with pay stubs or whatever the case might be. We're of course going to share it with you, Edison. We would ask your assistants to share it to your network as well. First come, first serve. Let's get some new trucks out there.
I love new trucks. I just don't love those new engines. I'll be honest with you.
Well, they're getting better from what I understand.
No, but my idea was to have these kind of meetings in Spanish and English at one point, because it's the first time that we have managed to create a meeting like this. It's very hard to do that because we have, like you can see, a lot of topics, and we haven't even scratched most of the situations that happen in the world. Like you mentioned, we have the long lines, we have the changes in the ports, we have all these constructions, we haven't reached about the future of the terminals, where we're going to be in the future 10 years from now, how the drivers are going to fit into that future. We have, just to give you an idea, one lady asked me, what about the restaurants? And that lady asked me that. We have this conversation. It's not that we haven't talked. I'm just going to give you the answers. The reason why we can have these restaurants is going to be here. Okay? So, but one of the reasons that we find out with you, I remember, is because safety. But this is some of the things that we want to be talking. And I want to be having this kind of reunion with you guys in Spanish. I want to just give you some ideas. Now that you see it, for those people that go out there, where do you get this information? This is my question. This is what I live every day. Where do you get this information? Can you give me a source? Can you tell me who you talk to? Can you give me a connection? Can you give me her phone number? So this is the thing, now you see that we don't come out with this information, we don't make up this information. We have places and we have sources for this information. So what I want to let you know, guys, is I'm going to have next week a nice educational program about what we're talking over here in Spanish, because we're going to be talking about what she just mentioned about the new grant is going to be available in June for the guys to steal, which is a small amount of trucks. Believe it or not, it's a small amount of trucks left in the ports with engines older than 97. So we're going to be talking this in Spanish, and I'm going to give you a little idea what I've been talking to the Port Authority and what's been happening. And like I say, I'm going to try to bring one of the highest persons from the longshoremen to come in over here, because it's time for them to come into this show. It's time for you, people from the longshoremen, to come in and talk to you guys and let them know your side of the story. I know the side because I talk to many of the longshoremen. Some of my friends are probably don't like me, but I want to make sure that somebody from your entity comes over here and explain your position too, because it's not fair that we guys are charging, calling names to these guys. All they do is come every day to work. I mean, I don't want to get any more deeper than that. I just want to say that we'll have somebody here, hopefully, to explain why we can get a nice relationship with drivers. Or maybe we can come up with an idea. Who knows? And like everything that is good always comes to an end. It's bad. This is not a different story. I just want to say something for you guys. If you think that this is one of the scenarios that we have to be worried about, I just had a meeting last week in a company called Harbor Freight with the drivers to talk about another different aspect of the industry that's happening, which is reclassification. That's something that I've been talking about. I know a lot of you guys don't understand that. The Port Authority has, they studying, they're analyzing the data, and I think on your side you try to come out with a report now that you're here. When it just, we all understand the necessity of changes. We all understand that we need to work in something for the future. And we all hate the long lines. But in the long run, we got to understand the whole part, all the points that are going to affect us. The ports, the terminals, the workers, the cargo, the lack of payment, this whole thing. This is the whole process. But I'm telling you, we want to let you know tonight that we need to come out and understand what is reclassification. I don't want to tell you why you have to choose. What I can tell you is if you choose wrong, what you're going to gain and what you're going to lose. So by that saying, guys, I want to appreciate all the guys that have been posting their comments. She's going to be, if you guys want to have some extra comments, some questions, anything regarding to the industry, not to the abuse, because the abuse is not going to change, these things that happen, but to the industry that you want to know about the truck program, the new truck resources book, questions about where are all the terminals changing, where is going to be the train lines, how this is going to affect us. Ms. Beth, I think you always sitting on our page once in a while. She comes in and answers those questions. So if you want to put questions, send the questions, put comments in there, ask her. You know, I don't have the space to invite you guys over here. We don't have the space, and you probably won't even come because something else will come out in your agenda. But now that you have an opportunity, see that it's true. What we've been telling you for years is true. We have a nice relationship with the Port Authority. We have a lot of things that we want to fix, but we can't fix, but not because we don't want to. It's just, unfortunately, it's not that easy to do. This is an industry that has 4.5 million containers a year. 4.5 million containers move through our ports, right?
Yep.
Imagine that. Imagine how can you fix things with that amount of volume, and it's going to triple in the next 10 years. So we got to understand all these things. And by saying that, I just want to tell you, Ms. Beth, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you, Edison. I appreciate
Hope
it.
it's not the last time.
I
So
appreciate it. No.
any kind of information for my guys. And for you guys, thank you for being with us. Hopefully you come and become a member. You boys can be heard through our association. We don't ask for any money. We just ask for your signature. And in return, you get all this kind of information. You get a lot of more programs that we put in together for your benefit, not for mine, for our benefit. So hopefully you guys take advantage of what we have to offer here and you become a member. So thank you, everybody. Have a nice evening. Good night.